Hey, I'm Rob from JestaThaRogue.com and I'm going to show you how to play Marvel Age of Heroes. This is a game for 2 to 5 players, plays in about 90 minutes, is designed by Rodney Thompson and is published by WizKids. Players control heroes that will take actions around Xavier's Institute to recruit allies and gain resources, or hop on the X-Jet to complete missions and damage the villain. When the final villain is defeated, the player with the most victory points is the winner. So take the gambit and forge a better life for yourself. Logan to YouTube and subscribe to Jesta ThaRogue, then lock key to the comments and do believe something nice. I take kitty pride in these videos, so storm the like button, it helps with the magic algorithm behind the scenes. Scott to admit, that felt Gene great. To set up, of course, place the board in the middle of the table. Now mission setup, there are 3 in the game and the one that's called Children of the Atom is suggested for your first game, so we'll start there. Put the parameter card for the mission under the game board. This shows the rules for the mission and I'll refer back to these later in the video when they become relevant. To create the Institute deck, get all of the core cards that are in every game and shuffle them together with those that have the Children of the Atom in the bottom right. There are 3 types of cards: green ally, blue team up and yellow event. Place the Institute deck face down on the labelled space above the board. Look for mission tiles showing Mission A, Mission B and the final test in the edge. They also show the name of the mission. Attach one random minor enemy, shown at the top right of the villain tiles, to mission tiles A and B and put them under the game board. Shuffle the challenging enemies into a face down deck and place them next to it. Randomly select one final test villain face down. Place the face down final test villain onto the final test mission tile and put that next to the other villains. Return any unused villains or mission tiles to the box. Now let's continue on the rest of setup, which happens regardless of which mission you play. Place the rounds 1 to 3 extraction zone tile on its space in the bottom right of the main board and keep the other nearby. Put the round marker on round 1 of the round track. Place the 3 colours of resource tokens, the star point tokens and the student pawns next to the board. Lay out the top 4 cards from the Institute deck to the 4 Xavier Protocol spaces above the board. On to player setup, and players take all the pieces of their player colour. Players get a player board and a set of evolution cards of the chosen characters and choose a side. The blue side is the basic side and the gold side is used for advanced games, and whichever side you pick, all players must use the same one. If using the blue side, players will use all evolution cards that say recommended on the bottom, which will be 4 to 6 depending on the chosen heroes. If using the gold side, players select any they like up to the number shown in the evolution box on the bottom left of the player board. Either way, all selected evolution cards are placed face up and the rest are returned to the box. Players place standees on the board according to the player count. In a 4 or 5 player game, use 3 standees on the 3 blue spaces. For a 3 player game, also use the space with a 3, and for a 2 player game, use all 6 spaces. Be sure to put the right character standee in the right space to make sure you're using the correct distribution of heroes, it does matter. Place the pentagonal score marker on 0 points of the score tracker, which is also the round tracker. Place the cube resource markers into the highlighted spaces on the 3 tracks, the numbers with the white markers. Choose a random start player, place their token on the 1 of the turn order track and place the rest in clockwise player order. Finally, each player draws 3 Institute cards. Now on to gameplay, which is in 2 phases, the Institute phase and the mission phase. In the Institute phase, players in turn order place a hero or student pawn on an empty Institute space, X-Jet space or pass. Institute spaces include the 5 Institute locations at the top of the board, the Headmasters Office to the left, or an ally card. More on allied cards shortly. To be able to play on a space, the player must be able to pay the cost of that space in full and then resolve as much of it as possible. Resource costs are paid by moving the relevant resource cubes on the player board. All action spaces and cards are resolved from top to bottom, left to right, and if anything triggers at the same time for different players, it's resolved in current turn order. Let's look at the Headmasters Office, which has some spaces restricted for the player count. The top 2 spaces are available for all player counts and have 2 symbols. The one on the left with Professor X makes you discard an Institute card from your hand if you have one to an empty Xavier Protocol space above the board. Discard a card from these 8 spaces if you need to make room. Then, draw the number of cards shown from the Institute deck. A number with an up arrow like this is to draw that many cards from the Institute deck. When drawing Institute cards, you can always choose those from the face-up ones available, including the one you just placed down, or you can draw from the top of the Institute deck. The other 2 spaces on the Headmasters Office are for 4 and 5 player games only and are to gain resources. That leads nicely onto the Danger Room, Research Lab and Dormitory spaces, which also allow you to gain the resources shown. Simply gain the amount shown by moving the relevant colour cube on the player board. Red is physical, yellow mental and blue is willpower. You can never have more than 10 or fewer than 0, basically you're limited to the board. The medical bay allows you to play an event card from your hand, simply resolve it and discard it. For example, mission prep allows you and each other player to gain 1 of any resource. The down arrow is a symbol to play a card and will have that card's type next to it, in this case the yellow event card symbol. The circle symbol is the symbol for the turn order track, so after playing an event card, the medical bay allows you to select your turn order for the next round. To do that, place a token on any empty space on the left of the turn order track. Obviously don't pick 5th in a 4-player game, stick to the player count, but each player can only have one token on the left hand track at any one time. Cerebro has 2 similar but different action spaces. The left space is to recruit an ally card from your hand into an empty ally space. The green symbol is the symbol for an ally card. Select an ally card from hand. Put it in any empty ally space and place a marker on the space above the card to show the player ownership. Now when a player who is not the recruiter takes that action by placing a pawn, the recruiter gets the recruitment bonus, in this case 2 physical resources. Due to certain card effects, it is possible for more than one player to be the recruiter for a card. In this case, all relevant players get the recruitment bonus. The right space with the grey symbol allows you to play an evolution card to your player board in the leftmost empty slot. You must be able to pay the resources shown on that slot first if there are any costs showing in that slot. Whenever you see these chevrons, which is the convert icon, anywhere in the game, they denote the cost and point towards what you get for paying that cost. Also, some evolution cards have restrictions. For example, Magic's Infernal Aptitude can only be played in slot 4 or higher. Evolution cards give you ongoing abilities. For example, Magic Sorcery allows you to convert any 3 resources to any 2 resources at the start of the turn. The effects on evolution cards may trigger other evolution cards but can never trigger themselves. Also, once they're played, they can't be discarded. To play a pawn onto an ally card, resolve the action shown on the card. Remember to tell the player to gain their recruiter bonus if required. To play on the X-Jet, place it in the topmost empty space. These do not count as action spaces and pawns placed here do not count as being assigned. The top space allows the player to play a team up card from their hand into a team up space on the board. As usual, add a player marker to show ownership. All of these spaces award points as a recruiter bonus. Okay, before we move on to passing, we need to clear up some stuff, starting with student pawns. When gained, these are added to an empty space on the player board and each player can hold between 2 and 4 depending on the characters they are playing. They can be played in place of one of your heroes and count as yours during the action resolution only. As soon as that action is resolved, they count as an enemy pawn for you and all the other players. Student pawns can't go on the X-Jet, there is a reminder of this on the board. Some actions refer to reassigning. This is to assign from another space on the board, not from your player board. Some actions put resource tokens on spaces. When assigning to that space, take the tokens, gain the resources and discard the token. The same for victory point tokens, gain the points and discard them. Now even though these spaces on the X-Jet don't count as action spaces, you can still place tokens on them, and even though you don't assign heroes to the X-Jet, when you place a pawn on there, you will gain the tokens as normal. Some abilities, such as ink, refer to a location, and various spaces are grouped by location. There are 7 locations on the board used during the Institute phase. The Headmasters Office is one, the X-Jet is another, the Medical Bay, Cerebro, the Danger Room, Research Lab, and dormitories, along with their 2 ally cord slots below each one as shown by the graphic design on the board, are each their own location. The team up cards area is the first of 2 locations on the main board used in the missions phase, as is the extraction zone along with its 2 ally card slots. Finally, each individual mission tile is a separate location. Okay, if you've done enough or you're out of pawns to play, you will pass. Choose your turn order for the next round if you haven't already, and drop out of the round. When all players have passed, you go to the missions phase. Start by resolving the X-Jet from top to bottom, moving the pawn to either a team up card, the extraction zone, or mission tile and resolving it. If moving to a team up card, pay the cost if required and resolve the effect and remind the owner about the recruiter bonus. For example, Bishop requires that you pay 6 physical and 4 mental resources to deal green damage and gain a student pawn. More on dealing damage shortly. When assigning to the extraction zone, take the bonus currently on the tile. For example, in rounds 1, 2 and 3, players can either gain 1 resource or pay 1 mental resource and gain 2 cards. The extraction zone holds any number of pawns. There are 2 slots for ally cards here too. These are played here in the Institute phase as normal but can only be activated by assigning a pawn from the X-Jet in the mission phase. Okay, let's look at how to assign a hero from the X-Jet in order to deal damage to a villain. You can only assign a pawn to a space on the left if it lines up with a damage symbol on the right. For example, Sabretooth has 3 spaces you can't activate. Pay the cost in resources for that space. Move your hero across and gain the points shown on the damage space, in this case 15 points. Cover the damage space with one of your player tokens. If damaging a villain from a card as we did earlier with Bishop, cover the icon and gain the victory points. Make sure the damage icon matches, so if damaging Sabretooth with Bishop, as the damage is green, only this space can be the target of the attack. When all damage spaces are covered, the villain is defeated. Resolve all when defeated effects in the current turn order. For example, Sabretooth awards each of the player markers 1 point for each player marker on Sabretooth. so the purple player has 2 player tokens here and will score 4 points. Discard any student pawns from the villain if there are any on it. Then in turn order, one at a time, move heroes from the villain to a free extraction zone space, taking that action as normal. Return the player markers to the players. Replace the villain tile if instructed. For example, Sabretooth says to replace them with a challenging enemy. Discard the tile and take the next one off the top from the face down challenging enemy pile. Mystique, for example, says to flip the final test face up when they are defeated, allowing you to attack the final villain. The Children of the Atom parameter card reminds you that you may not assign pawns to the final test until that villain is face up. Now it's possible that due to card effects, a villain can be defeated in the Institute phase. If this is the case, just resolve the defeated villain and then go back to taking turns as normal. Once all the extract pawns have been resolved, go to the end of round phase. Perform any end of round instructions on ally and team up cards. For example, Professor X says to score 2 points for each hero you have on an X-Men ally or team up card. Team affiliation is shown under the character's name. It's important to know that these abilities that are not on the action box themselves apply only to any player that has a hero on that card. I say any player because some abilities let you play multiple heroes to the same space, and I say any hero because, as we know, student pawns are only yours when they are being assigned. They are not yours at this stage of the round. Perform end of round instructions on the parameter card, which we do not have for this mission, but be sure to check your parameter cards. Players take back their hero pawns and return any student pawns on any action spaces back to the supply. For turn order, players take back the counter on the right side of the turn order track and move the left column over to the right. Move the round marker up 1 space. Change the extraction zone token to match the current round if required. There's a reminder to do this on the round track. If there are fewer than 4 Xavier Protocol cards, fill it up to 4 from the deck. If there are 8 cards on the track, discard them all and draw 4 new ones. If the endgame triggers, the game ends immediately. For Children of the Atom, the game ends when the final test is defeated, as shown on the parameter card, and the player with the most victory points is the winner. For the tiebreaker, see who has the most willpower, then mental, then physical resources. And that's how you play Marvel Age of Heroes. Thanks for watching, and thanks to designer Rodney Thompson, WizKids Sev Schlosinger, and Board Game Geek user Mark Fisher for helping me clarify some rules on the Board Game Geek forums. Remember to like, share and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when a new video goes live. You can follow me on Insta, Twitch and YouTube at JestaThaRogue and find the blog at JestaThaRogue.com. I've been Rob aka JestaThaRogue, and I'll see you soon.